Paula, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
I am thrilled to be here today with you, Loopy.
So, I like to start every interview by asking guests, as a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a veterinarian.
Oh, yeah. What do you think? What was it about being a veterinarian? Was it the animals?
Just animals. Yeah, I was really into animals and yeah, and I wanted to help. I kind of had that urge to help, but yeah, never actually really pursued that as an opportunity. But when I was younger, it was a veterinarian, then it was an architect. And I
Mm.
started architecture school. And the first semester, I was like, oh, this is not for me. And I switched to visual communications and graphic design.
Ah. Oh, and tell us, Paula. So, for those who don't know you, do you mind sharing what you do today and how you think veterinarian and architect connects to that?
I am now a women's mental fitness coach, and my passion is really helping people just become, especially women, become connected to their true self so that they can be the happiest, healthiest, stress freest versions of who they are. The give back component is kind of a commonality because you're helping people create something beautiful. You're, with the pet, it's a beautiful life, the beautiful love that you share as a veterinarian. With the architect, it's built something that people, oh, I love that. And then with the coach, it's like, oh, I love how I feel. So to me, I guess that's the connection between them. But yeah, architecture and veterinarian, they're pretty disparate. And I think that the veterinarian was my desire to help and give back and be warm and fuzzy and lovey. And the
Mm.
architecture was my love of how do you put things together and make them better and come out in a different way.
Mm. So tell us, was it a straight path to what you do today? I assume it was
Yeah,
not a straight line.
yeah, definitely not. And I think as with most of us, that's kind of the way it goes. I was moving heavily into my career as was heavily into the career as the graphic designer. I was actually by that point in my late 30s had reached the point of being creative operations and advertising agencies or corporate graphics and art marketing advertising areas. And everything changed when I was 37 when I got diagnosed with breast cancer.
Mm.
And it took me about 3 years to get my life back.
Mm.
And at the end of that, I couldn't go back to advertising and get all stressed out about whether or not my Taco Bell commercials got on the radio at the right time or working 12, 14-hour days just to make somebody money. There was
Mm.
no heart connection with it anymore, and it felt awful.
Mm.
And so over a period of quite a few years, I became self-employed. I left my corporate job and was self-employed and freelanced and did the same type of work, but under the freedom of my own company. And that was back in 2001. And then as I was recovering from cancer and becoming more engaged, I did a lot of volunteer work and got involved with helping people with cancer. That was when the desire to become a coach started to become through. I kept having these ideas, was building this folder of what I would do to support women who were recovering
Mm.
from breast cancer, because it pissed me off that it took me 3 years to get my life back. And then by coincidence, I came across coaching. And at
Mm.
my very first coach training, I met a doctor from my town who knew an oncologist who helped me pilot my first program for cancer survivors. And so that's how I got into coaching and
Wow.
the transformation of people's lives. I was doing it and it was really working. And then I started helping other people doing it and it was really working. And my interest and commitment and training and methods just kind of grew from there.
Wow. So it sounds like the breast cancer diagnosis set you off in this completely different direction
Yeah.
and kind of awakened you to something
Yeah.
deeper, a
Yeah.
deeper.
It was self reinvention on a intuition and spirit driven level rather than a brain driven level. And
Hmm.
that was something I had been kind of maybe unconsciously aware of in my life, but it really came to the forefront at that time. I started to learn to make choices of doing things because they felt right or because they were what I wanted or because they would
Hmm.
be happier or they enabled me to help people. And before, my life was basically spent doing what people told me to do, my job, my boss, my parents, my husband, or what I thought they wanted me to do, which was even more damaging because it was all made up. And I
Hmm.
didn't do it anymore after cancer. It really did on a very deep fundamental level change me, as it does with almost everybody who goes through cancer, no matter what the situation, circumstances, or outcome, it's a wake-up call. And I was so grateful to be in a position where I could actually learn from it myself and go in and then really make a good portion of my career out of helping other women do the same thing. It was just my heart. That was what I was meant to do at that time, for sure. And I just dove in and did it. And it was very successful for me.
Oh, I love that. Well, I want to dig in a little more into the programs you were creating for women with the oncologist. So tell us more about that. What kind of things were you working on? Or what kind of programs were you creating for the women? What kind of coaching were you offering? Like, I know we've all had cancer, or not maybe personally, but affect us in some way, directly or indirectly.
Absolutely.
So what did you provide for these women? What did you learn through that experience?
God, the first thing I learned is that I wasn't alone.
Mm,
And the fact that I was really struggling to get my life back, because at that point in time, bearing in mind this was 20 years ago, the oncology community's obligation to the patient ended when you're in remission, you're cured, or there's nothing we can
mm,
do for you. And nowadays, there's so much stronger support for the transition. But what really called to me, I was doing a lot of volunteer work visiting newly diagnosed patients for the American Cancer Society. But what was really calling my name was that transition. So I created a series of workshops and a course, like a 6-week course. And I went to breast cancer centers and oncology healthcare professionals and said, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'd like to bring it to your people. And my first big offering was a 2-day workshop, totally focused on the transition from hearing that, okay, great, you're going to live, to, okay, so I need a whole new normal life, because nothing was the same. For virtually every survivor that I met or interacted with, what changed was they wanted to be a lot healthier really quickly because they didn't want the cancer to come back. They needed to rearrange their life so that it had meaning in it, and that they got to focus on things that fed them and loved them, because they faced the fact that they could die. And hey, my time is limited. I'm committed to making the most of it. And then in almost everybody, a compelling urge to give back in some way. And just step out of a cancer experience when you're not at your best at that point, especially back then, and to say, okay, well, I'm going to quit smoking, change my diet, start exercising, and reduce my stress. And I'm going to do it all tomorrow. And I'm never, ever going to not do it right again. That was the energy. And as you can imagine, I failed miserably at doing that. And so did everybody else. So the program was really focused on first normalizing what they were experiencing, helping them understand that there was nothing wrong with them, that they weren't failing at recovering from cancer, that their best intentions were achievable, but not all at the same time in a short time, creating empathy for themselves, compassion, and then actually just teaching them coaching process of, well, what do I value the most? How do I look at what I have and say, this I want to keep, and this isn't feeling so good? But it was really, the first big component was the sharing of the story, because most of us never really had a chance to share our story while it was happening. So that was always the beginning of any work that I did with survivors, was tell your story. Tell us what you went through, and feel that we've all been there with you and we love you and we're here to support you. That was the big part of it. And then the second part of it is kind of expanding what's possible. At that point in time, you're kind of beat down, you've been pretty traumatized, everything in your world has changed. Our basic brain tendency is to hunker in, to take control, to get a little smaller, to hold on, to be safe. And I had to teach them how to step through that and accept it as normal and natural, but to really open up the possibility that there was more, and that these things that they were longing for, more time with the family, a less stressful job, giving back, changing their lifestyle routine, that those things were all possible. They couldn't do it overnight at the snap of a finger, but it was definitely possible. And part of the way that I helped teach them that was other survivors, not just my story, but hearing their others, and then hearing people who were further down the journey from them. And so the process was organic in its own way, because it was different with every group of women that came in and what they were specifically going through. But the process was always the same. Share your story, give yourself permission for self-empathy and self-love. Get really clear on what lights you up and what matters to you. And then here's how you process the normal human resistance that we have to change, and get to the other side and get into that place where you have your life back again, except you like your life. And now I have some control over what I'm doing. Yes, I can take actions to make myself healthier. And I will comment, just as a little side note, underneath all of that is overcoming the fear of recurrence or the fear of what could happen in the future, especially for people who are recently ending treatment. And especially back then, that was always the hidden fear that nobody really wanted to talk about, that had to be addressed, had to make peace with our own mortality. And that's where the opening came for the bigger vision of what's possible. I mean, truthfully, for me, it's like I faced death, I came through. I'm not really that afraid of a whole lot of things anymore. I'm willing to be a lot riskier, a lot bolder, to take hugely scary leaps of faith, because I can't stay where I am anymore. And that's probably the biggest story of myself, my life and myself, is just reinventing myself when what I wasn't working anymore. The conscious doing of that for the first time was definitely after the cancer experience.
Wow, Paula.
It was one of the best, and it led to so many other of the best things. And I am actually a 25-year survivor this year, in January of this year.
Congratulations.
So it was a long time,
Congratulations.
but here I am.
Well, there's a lot there that you just shared that I want to highlight.
Okay.
And so, Paula, you said some of the steps that you went through with these women who were cancer survivors in this program. You said sharing your story, giving yourself empathy. You said getting clear on your values and what's important to you, and then making peace with your own mortality.
Yeah, that's the tough one.
And as I was taking notes as you were talking, I thought, wow, this really is a lesson for all of us in how to live life.
It is. And that was the gift for me, because there came a point when for about 10 or so years, I got pretty burned out in that industry. I decided to go in a different direction. But what I learned then has always been the foundation for the work that I've done with people, whether they have cancer or not, because it is the same process for all of us, really. Cancer just makes it really urgent.
And as I think about myself and clients and the people I love, like, what's more beautiful than giving ourselves empathy? Well, one, sharing your story, right? Sharing our story and connecting with other people in that way, giving ourselves empathy. I think through my work in coaching, I feel like a lot of it comes down to giving ourselves empathy.
That's the foundation for
Yes.
everything. We can only share as much love as we love ourselves. We can beat ourselves up, especially as women. I wouldn't treat a murderer the way I would treat myself sometimes. We're conditioned in a different direction, and we have the ability to shift it around, but often not the awareness or the means to do so.
Yeah. I always tell clients about our inner critic voice that we all have, and even just creating awareness around it and then tapping into that inner leader voice. And the inner leader voice is a compassionate voice.
Exactly. That's so true.
Well, then you said getting clear on your values and what's important to you. And then the last one really resonated with me. You said making peace with our own mortality. And even if we're not facing a cancer diagnosis, that's really true for all of us.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of humans fear the unknown worse than anything. And death is kind of the ultimate thing that we don't want to. I learned from myself and so many of the hundreds of patients that I worked with is that there's a freedom in it. And the freedom comes from taking back choice in your own life and starting to feel like you're driving your life instead of at the mercy of it, and being committed to knowing what lights you up and doing it and making it priorities in your life. That applies to everybody, but that's how the fear goes away. We can't change it. Fearing it is worthless. What matters is the quality of the way that we're experiencing life now. That's what matters. And,
I felt that.
Yeah.
I really felt that.
Yeah. It's been a long journey for me to get there in a way that I really feel like I embody it a lot more than I used to. And there's always room to grow. I'll be growing until forever. But I will say that even though my diagnosis was really not life-threatening, I was diagnosed at stage 1. It was caught early. I had pretty aggressive surgery and chemo. Odds of me dying, I didn't say, okay, you better prepare to die or anything like that. But just hearing the word cancer, it creates that fear for all of us. Like you said, not only for the patient, but the people that love them, the people that are in their community. And it clears away a lot of stuff that you're carrying around that doesn't really matter. That's when the fear starts to go away, because you start to really only care and focus on what does matter. And then when you're focusing on and doing what does matter, you feel better and you're
Mm,
healthier and you're more motivated to take care of yourself. And so it's like I guess it's a spiral. You go in a circle, but you go up a level each time. And I've seen that happen with so many of my peers, my survivor peers, my clients, my fellow survivor leaders in the community. All of them, their lives changed pretty dramatically. And exactly the three ways that I said: they want to be healthier, they want to do what matters, and they want to give back. And I'm just in awe of some of the things that these women do that have made a difference for so many other people.
like you.
Thank you. Yep, like me. Definitely. I'm really proud of that. It's one of the happy things of my life for sure.
Hmm. Well, as you were talking and you said there's so much freedom in that knowledge, it was almost like able to like take a deep breath, like that's almost like liberating. And how beautiful that must feel, right? To think through that and say, wow. And even as you were talking, I was going through scenarios in my head that I'm worried about currently or have been
Mhm.
worried about. And if I were to place that thought in front of like the mortality piece, those things don't really matter.
And as a coach, that's part of what we do, is help people really see that bigger picture and address those deeply held, normal, natural fears that we all have. And even more importantly, as coaches, we let them see that there's other possibilities and how to get there. Here's to us.
Paula, I want to dive into another piece of your work, which was so I met you at a networking event that was put together by Lisa Ong, who's also
Yes,
been on the podcast, who's a huge connector
yes,
here
she
in the
is.
Dallas Fort Worth area and nationally too, really. And what you were sharing was your work as a watercolor artist. So you introduce yourself as a coach and you also hold classes for watercolor painting.
Oh, yeah.
And that's always been kind of like, as I think about wanting to be a little more creative, ooh, I think I'd like watercolor. And I think I even mentioned maybe I can throw like a party for a group of friends or something. Tell us, how did you get into that? So it sounds like being a creative has always been part of your life. How
Yeah,
did you kind of dive into that?
always was creative. BFA in school, wouldn't have made it through high school without art classes. Worked as a graphic designer for many years. And like I said, moved up the ladder. But I really let go of the painting when I finished college. I was a mother, I was building a career. There was just a lot, and it just slipped away. And in 2013, I went through a really significant, both emotional and physical health crisis that pretty much
Mm,
shut down. And three of the practitioners that I was working with within a 2-week period said, you need to find something that you really enjoy doing,
mm,
that's only for you, that totally calms down your brain. Because that part of what was happening to me was I've been diagnosed with PTSD. You need to do something that really quiets your mind
mm,
and something that you will do consistently. And I just thought back to what I loved, and it was painting and
mm,
watercolor painting, because I never really painted a lot of watercolor, but I loved it. So I went on Google and I found a teacher nearby and I loved her. And I went to 3-hour class on Thursday afternoons from 2014 until 2019. And we learned
wow.
how to paint and created the style, that kind of loose graphic-y style that people love about my work. And really didn't believe that I could ever make money doing it or anything like that. But Lisa and her team inspired me to say, well, maybe I could.
Mm,
And so I just put together an event that I called Women, Wisdom, and Watercolor. And it is for women who have absolutely no artistic experience or skills. And we paint flowers.
mm,
And what it really is a comparison of how the lessons of watercolor painting mirror the lessons of life. Because
mm.
everybody always said, oh, watercolor painting's so hard. When we were starting the last event, oh, it's so hard. And I'm like, no, what it is, what people are saying and artists are saying when it's so hard, is what they mean is they can't control it.
Mm,
And what we're going to learn today is why not being able to control something is really wonderful, and how it can really be great in your life. And that's really what it is. It's just stepping into, first of all, we do something really silly. We paint with straws, but you can create flowers by painting, by blowing with straws. I could show you some
interesting.
samples if you'd like. But, and then we talked about the differences, and it really became clear that what really resonated with people the most is the fact that, wow, I have to sit here and I have to let this watercolor painting do its own thing. And then, oh my God, look at what it turned into. And then that total just rejuvenating relaxation when they were done, going, wow, I shut my brain down for 3 hours. And then, oh my God, look at what I made. This pride, this joy of being able to say, I didn't think I could do it. And look what I did.
Mm.
And that's where it comes together. The coaching and the watercolor is the same things that I teach people to do as a coach are what I learned to do watercolor. It didn't take me 3 months in that class to figure out this was my healing path. And everything that was happening was I was learning for a reason. And that was going to be to share it. Just like when I went through cancer, I knew there was a reason. I knew I was meant to share it because it just transformed me. I mean, my PTSD symptoms now are virtually totally manageable. My creativity just went through the roof when I started doing it because I was consistently shutting my brain down and giving space for other stuff to come through. And then I was feeding myself with something that I did, and I would just look at it going, oh my God, I'm an artist. Look at that. I did that. And we all need something like that we do that lights us up, that we love, and that we're just so proud and thrilled of. And I mean, there are times that I'll paint something and I'll just sit there looking at this little spot of it. Like, God, look at what that created on its own. It's so gorgeous. I did it, but I didn't do it, but it's mine. So it's a way to really, first of all, just connect women to the ease of disconnecting from brain-driven stress and chatter and whatever. But more importantly, it's lighting that creative spark, letting you see that you have it in you. And then opening up the space and permission to not have to know it all, to let it flow and see what happens. And to me, that's kind of what my coaching is about and what I want to do for people. What I love the most is seeing that light bulb moment that I saw in everyone who's attended this event to go, I did that. And not only did I do it, but now I'm sharing it with other people. I'm doing it with my mom. I'm doing it with my kid. I mean, yeah.
That's amazing. As I think about my own life and work and kids and summer camp right now and all those things, I think, oh, life is really full. And yet there is this kind of, as you're talking, and I bet listeners are feeling that too, of like, ooh, I want to make a little space for that.
Yeah.
Creativity. I don't know exactly what it is yet or what that would look like or when or how, but there's like something as you're talking, I'm like, oh, I think I need something kind of meditative and creative
That's a
that I
really
haven't
good
tapped
way.
into.
Yeah, a really good way to describe that longing that's coming from our heart is that we
Yeah.
have something in us that we want to create. And it may be something big, but we're meant to create as human beings, I believe, as spiritual human beings. And so making time, and I see that with so many of my clients, and oftentimes that's why they come to me. It's just like there's something missing. I know there's something I'm meant to do. You can create anyway. I do other creative processes with clients and groups as well. The easiest thing to do is crayons. Pick up crayons and skibble. You put crayons in the hand of an adult, and the little kid just comes dancing out. And I've done that with groups of nurses and all kinds of in different ways. But for me, it's like shutting down that thinking brain and just seeing what comes out. I could talk about that for a long time, so I won't.
Well, I definitely have access to crayons.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old.
there you go. So I will tell you, the next time you're stressed, something's really annoying you, or you're really upset about something, go sit down, pick up a couple crayons and just start scribbling. And that will be very much, I actually did that with one of our ICF chapter in Fort Lauderdale right after COVID started. But there's just something about it that just lets that negative energy just kind of come on out. I have mandalas that people can color, all kinds. If you want to play, talk to me afterwards. I'll send you something to play with.
Thank you. If someone's listening, thinking, what coming up for me is almost like there's not a cancer diagnosis, thank goodness, right? But there is kind of a feeling of maybe there does need to be an awakening or a transformation or getting clear on values and all of that. Maybe there's kind of like some curiosity there, something that you've said has sparked something for someone.
I hope so. I really do.
What would you say to that person listening?
I would say if you're feeling that, you're meant to do it, first of all, in some way. And it doesn't matter what you do, just do something. For most, it can be looking back as a kid. One of the things that I really reconnected with when I was a kid, I loved swimming. I loved being in the water. And now I love being in the water again. And the other thing I would say is that it will change your life to give yourself permission to engage with something creative, whether it's gardening, coloring, anything at all.
Mm,
But I would also say is that you owe it to yourself,
mm,
because our brains need that shutdown. They need that method of getting away from all of the thoughts that just, one of my clients calls it the rat on the wheel. Even 2 or 3 minutes of conscious breath work, coloring, movement, meditation. Those are the things that open the door for more. If you're going, oh God, I'd like to try watercolor. Could I do ceramics? Or wow,
mm,
that thing that person is doing looks really interesting. Just go do it
mm,
once. You have nothing to lose, and try a lot of things. It isn't just one thing. It's whatever draws you that you kind of want to go. It's like you go walk in a store and you see something and you just know it's meant to be yours. When you have that moment of knowing that it's, I'd like to do that. Ooh, just do it. Follow the
mm.
impulse. That would be my advice. Follow the impulse.
Oh, thank you, Paula. If people want to learn more about you, how can people work with you? How can people follow along? Tell us all the things.
My website is what'snextformylife.com, just exactly like it sounds, no apostrophe. And you will find all kinds of stuff there about me. You'll find info about the studios and the other things I've been doing. You can also follow me on Facebook and LinkedIn as Paula R. Holland. And I primarily do small groups of women. I do a lot of activities and courses with small groups. And I also work with people one-on-one. And
Mm,
the beginning point for that is just to reach out to me. My email is paula@what'snextformylife.com. So I'm pretty easy to find. And we'll talk and find, I like to create customized paths for people
mm,
that can pull in the creative aspect. Some people are more drawn to creative expression through writing or movement or music or art. But I like to create custom programs for people that incorporate something like that that resonates with them,
mm,
to start to bring that in. And so, yeah, what's next for my life.com.
mm. And you're based out of the Dallas area
I
and
am. I do
and
work with people all over the country and the
okay,
world.
yes. And so you also offer virtual options. So whoever's listening can work with you virtually as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. Paula, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Lupi. And you have just made it such a comfortable and welcoming conversation. I really, really appreciate you too. Thank you.
Thank you.